Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. The translation of that message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? My brother, my story goes on like this. I am a man who is aged 58 years old. In my young age, I used to hang around big politicians back in our country. I can say that I was someone who was always used like to do some run-arounds for big politicians when they didn't want to be seen doing those run-arounds. Like most of the politicians, they have like secret businesses that they do not want people to know that they are in control of those companies. So I was always put on the forefront. So there was one politician who wanted to start this very big company, and he really wanted to assist me in life. One day he called me over to his place. Me and him, we used to go to the same church. So soon after church, he told me that I had to come to his house. It was there in the suburbs. I then went there, my brother, and as we sat down, he told me his business plan, and he said that since he was already in the government, there was no way he could be able to do some deals with the government. So he was looking for someone who could do the runarounds for him, and I was the perfect guy since in the past I had already done this thing. So I was really experienced when it came to this thing. So I agreed. And there was this other time when he had a rally back in the village where he comes from, because he wanted to be re-elected as an MP again. So he asked me to drive with him to that rally. When we were going to that rally, my brother, as we were stopping along the way for me to buy him some food, usually he would not get out of the car. It will be me that will get out of the car, go to the shop and buy some food and some refreshments for him. So at that time, after I had bought the refreshments for him, he said that I should not drive yet because he just wanted to rest for a couple of minutes and he wanted to go to the bathroom. He waited until when he had seen that there was not a lot of people that was going to the bathroom. That was when he got out of the car. He then went to the bathroom and he relieved himself. In the meantime, when he left me in his car, I then looked at the back seat where he was sitting, and I saw that beside the place where he was sitting, there was a brown briefcase, those old briefcases that were made out of leather, and it was opened up a little bit. So I then opened it up even further, and I saw that there were loads and loads of US dollars that were just stacked in that brown leather briefcase, and I just removed some money. At that time, I didn't even count the money because it was quite a lot. And when we had returned back from the rally, that was when I counted the money. It was somewhere around 2,000 US dollars. What I didn't know was that this man, since he wanted to give me the keys to this big business that he wanted to open, he wanted to test me first to see if I was faithful or not. And I had failed that test because all of this thing, it was just a trap. And he told me that this was a trap, and he was really hurt because he wanted to see me being someone that was going to be financially stable, wealthy, in fact. And after I had stolen that money, I then ran away because I was scared that this man, because of his political connections, maybe I was going to disappear. And if I was going to disappear, then no one was going to investigate what would have happened to me. So I ran away first to Mozambique, because at that time when he called me, I was in Mutare and it was really close to Mozambique. So I didn't want to take that risk to return back to Harare and go to South Africa. So for me, Mozambique was the closest country that was to me. So at that time, Mozambique was the closest country. I ran away to Mozambique, but I felt like I was being followed all the time when I was in Mozambique, because when I would get out of the house going to the shops, there were always men that I would always come across. I started thinking that maybe it was a coincidence, but it kept on happening over and over again. So I suspected that maybe these men, they were following me. That was when I came to South Africa. I left Mozambique in the middle of the night and I came to South Africa. That is in 2008. That was when I came here to South Africa, and I could not return back home because of the fear that I had. But I am someone who is a lucky person, because when I came here, my brother, I then started associating with people and hanging around wealthy people. This is what happens to me. No matter where I go, I will always find myself in the company of wealthy people that would want to assist me. So amongst some of these people that I was now hanging around with, one of them, he had his businesses in Zim, Mozambique, as well as South Africa, and he said that he can't be on the road all the times since he was getting old. So he wanted me to become his personal manager. Anything that he wanted to be done, he will send me. That is how I became like his personal assistant, but a glorified one. After that, I then returned back home after that politician that I have robbed of his money had passed away. And when I returned back home, I heard that his son had said that he knew that I had stolen something from his father and he wanted me to return back that money. And even though years had passed by, but this young man, he still wanted me to pay back, and I didn't have the money to spare so that I can pay off that $2,000 that I had stolen. I then returned back to the village. Back in our village, my brother, there is a lot of witchcraft that takes place, and when I returned back to the village where I was born, it was quite easy for me to source for a powerful traditional healer. I went to that traditional healer and I sought out a healer who could give me protection charms. I was given these protection charms, the one that was mixed with fat taken from a lion and fat that was taken from a python. This was to make me to dominate other people. And these charms, what they were meant to do was that if there is anyone that I will be owing him or her the money that they would have given to me, when they would want to ask me about this money, they would just say, I will do it the next time. And the rule that was given to me by that healer was that I was not supposed to eat this other vegetable that we have back home. It is called okra, as well as fish. I was not allowed to eat fish or any food that comes out of water. Any creature that stays in the water, I was not supposed to eat that food. Neither was I supposed to eat any food whereby any creature that lives in the water, it would have been cooked using that same pot which later would be used to cook the food that I am supposed to eat. If I was going to do that, then I was going to break my own oath. I was not allowed to eat food that would have been cooked when I am not there. I was not allowed to cook. I was not allowed to eat soft porridge that would have gone cold. I was only allowed to eat soft porridge that will still be warm or hot. So at that time, this seemed to be very easy, but the rules were broken. What happened was that at that time, my wife, she was busy running around. She was going to Botswana. She had recently opened up her own flea markets with her friend. So they used to drive to Botswana so as to collect their orders. They were selling your electrical gadgets as well as clothes and shoes. So they would go to Botswana twice or once a month. So on that trip, when my wife and her friend had gone to Botswana, my wife's cousin sister was staying with us and she was pregnant at that time. So her pregnancy was craving for fish, and my wife had not gotten that chance to explain things to her, like I am not allowed to eat that vegetable that is called okra, neither was I allowed to eat fish. That time, my wife had not told her cousin sister sister about the rules that I have to follow. So when my wife had gone out, that was when my cousin's sister started cooking. I was just in the bedroom and I was watching some movies. So she cooked her fish, which she had just gone to the shops and she bought that tinned fish, because in my house I made sure that there was no fish that was bought no matter what. So she felt like she wanted fish, then she went to the tuck shop and she bought tinned fish. And after preparing a tinned fish, she just quickly prepared the beef using that same frying pan without even washing that same frying pan that she had used when she was preparing a tinned fish. When I started eating, that was when I heard that there was someone that was walking on top of the roof, and I knew that something was wrong. My brother, I then saw a shadow that was walking in my bedroom, and the shadow told me that the rules had been broken. That shadow then transformed and it became a snake. And then what happened at that time was that my last born had gone on a school trip, and I then received the sad news that my son had been bitten by a snake. And the way that he died, Brother Nash, was that his skin had changed its color and he had become black, like charcoal black. That is what he looked like at the time when we buried my son. And when this happened, I then returned back to that healer and I told him about this issue that had happened, and he showed me everything that had happened. My wife's cousin was the one who had caused all of these things, and I then said, what am I supposed to do after I had returned back to that traditional healer? Because he had said that all my kids were going to die, and they were going to die within a couple of years. Each and every year I was going to bury one amongst my own children. I cried as I was begging him for mercy, as I was kneeling down in his consulting room. That was when he granted me mercy. That traditional healer then rose up and he went to this corner of his consulting room, and at that corner of his consulting room there were a lot of your traditional items. Some of them were traditional cups, traditional pots. He took one traditional cup. In our language we call it mukombe. After he had taken that traditional cup, he then came and he sat close to me and he told me that this traditional cup that he was about to give me, this is where the tokologies that I now had will quench their thirst, not by water, he said, but by female bodily fluids, the bodily fluids that come out of a female only through a private part. That is what will quench the thirst of these tokologies. And for me to satisfy them and for me to stop them from killing any member of my family each and every day of the month, 365 days a year, I had to sleep with a woman each and every day non-stop. And since that year I have been doing this constantly. Each and every day I make love to a different woman. Since I had money and since I was really connected, for me to spend money on different women, this was quite easy. I started by sleeping with desperate women, giving them money. I would sleep with one woman on each and every given day, including my own wife. When I will sleep with a woman, then I will not bath and I will refuse, like after making love, for a woman to wipe off my manhood, including my own wife. She last wiped my manhood. This was way back before I had started performing these rituals. I don't know how many years my wife has never wiped off my manhood. And when I would have done this, and when I started doing this inside that traditional cup that had been given to me by that traditional healer, he said, look inside of it. And when I looked inside, I saw that there was a small python that was in there, and it was a python that was and this python, it didn't have a body. It was just the head of a small python. But right now, throughout the years, this python's head, it has been growing. Now it is as big as my own fist. Python, what it does is that whenever I return from a sleepover, and I will then insert my manhood into its open mouth, and once I insert my manhood into its open mouth, then it will start draining some fluid from my manhood. What I suspect is that whenever I am sleeping with these women, I drain off their bodily fluids. And after I had seen that, I didn't have any way safe to keep this traditional cup and the altar that the healer told me to build inside my home. And at that time, I was constantly staying in different hotels and making sure to tell the workers at that hotel where I'll be staying not to clean up my room, because I wanted it to be that way. And on the day that I will check out, I will then first remove my altar and my traditional cup and place it inside my car before I would call for room services. I then thought of a plan, since I was already connected with a lot of business people here in South Africa. I then ended up buying another property here in South Africa. At that time, my wife said that she wanted to go abroad, and we went to the UK. I stayed there for a couple of years, and I then bought a property as well in Ireland, where my wife and kids are staying. That is where my kids are going to school, and I then returned back to South Africa. Regularly, they do come here to South Africa, but I can say that I am permanently based in South Africa. Why am I permanently based in South Africa? It is because this gives me the freedom not to worry about my wife touching my altar, and I know that I am safe. Like now, my house, it has become a safe place for my altar, and I am able to keep my wife and kids who are in Ireland safe. I stay here in South Africa managing my businesses that I have both in Zim and in SA. My house has become more like a slaughterhouse. Every day I am with different women, and all of these women, after sleeping with them, I do satisfy and quench the thirst of this tokoloshi that is in form of a head of a python. This process, I do it on a daily basis. Usually, I go and pick up one amongst my lovers, and I return with them, and I sleep with them. If they ask for money, I do not hesitate. Some of them, they think that we are doing it for the sake of love, but some of them, they do it for the sake of me giving them money. But what they do not know is that in return, I do take something from their body and feeding it to these tokoloshis, for this is the only way that I can keep my own small family safe. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our brothers.